Jubilees 2, 8 through 9. It's day 4 of creation week. The greater, lesser lights, sun, moon, and stars, all the luminaries of the heavens were placed in the vaulted dome structures of the firmaments that are stacked above the earth, right? We don't believe that these are floating in the sky underneath our first layer of the firmament, the sun and moon stars, but that they're in the firmament of the heavens, as Genesis 1 Jubilees here says. But more specifically, we believe the stars are likely in the fifth heaven, per the apocalypse of Abraham, with the circuits of the sun taking place in the third heaven, as we've concluded from Revelation 12 and the Greek apocalypse of Baruch. And as for the moon, no scripture that I'm aware of gives an exact location. I would speculate that the moon is in the second or third heaven as well. Some rabbinic traditions say the second. However, what matters most tonight is how these luminaries appear to us on earth as it pertains to the biblical calendar. And so Jubilees goes on here to say that God appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days and for Sabbaths and for months and for feasts and for years and for Sabbaths of years and for Jubilees and for all the seasons of the years. Hard stop here too, guys. A lot of people have a problem with this right out the gate.
Yeah, those lunar folks. They don't like this one.
We love them. We love them. Many of them are our brothers.
Yep.
Nonetheless, in scripture, the sun is called a he and the moon is called a she. Even the words are masculine and feminine, right? So the sun is called the greater light and the moon the lesser. And so God put the sun in charge here. So when Jubilees specifies that the sun is a great sign for the appointed times, I don't personally find that to contradict what Genesis 1 says. How about y'all?
I just think it adds to it. Yeah.
Zooms in on more details, right?
Yeah, same. Because from the lunar observers, I don't see them explaining how the sun comes into play from Genesis 1.
Not until you get into the nitty gritty of how they choose the start of the year. Because, as we found out, and we'll look at here later on, that the lunar crowd typically waits for the spring equinox, which is determined by a equal day, equal night, right? The sun determines when the equinox is, and then they'll use the phase of the moon after that, the new moon after that. Some of them say conjunction, some of them say the sliver of the moon, but they're doing it after the solar year basically begins, right? That's what they're depending it on.
Yeah, I think it's the equal day, equal night, equal lux, technically, I think.
There's another discussion about that too. Yeah, we'll get into a little bit of that later. So Wisdom of Solomon, this is a book that used to be in our Bibles, right? It was in the 1611 King James. And it says, would you read, Ken?
Absolutely. It is he who gave me true knowledge of the forces of nature, what the world is made of, how the elements behave, how the calendar is determined by the movements of the sun, the changing seasons, the constellations, and the cycles of years. Sounds like it pairs quite well with the previous passage we just read out of Jubilees, with the sun being the chief luminary that determines and dictates months, years, days.
Correct. Yeah, it also mentions the changing seasons and the constellations too. So that'll be fun to get into. But this, as we see it on screen, is worded this way in both the Contemporary English Version, CEV, and the Good News Translation, whereas the New American Bible would say, he gave me the knowledge of the beginning and the end and the midpoint of times, the changes in the sun's course, and the variations of the seasons. So either way, we are talking about time and seasons in relation to the sun, which is calendar talk. So I like it.
Yeah, it's good.
Quite the assertion by Solomon there, eh?
Yeah.
Like that's a big burden to have all that on your shoulders there, to have all that knowledge.
Right. But he wasn't the only one nor the first one to be shown this knowledge about how the calendar works, was he?
Absolutely
No.
Jubilees 4:17. Would you read, Sean?
It says, Enoch was the first among men that are born on earth who learned writing and knowledge and wisdom, and who wrote down the signs of heaven according to the order of their months in a book, that men might know the seasons of the years according to the order of their separate months.
So Enoch was the first one. We're talking about seventh from Adam, the righteous prophet of God that Jude calls him to be.
Yeah, it's interesting how 7 generations later, we get the first apparent person to be writing down knowledge in a book. You know, it's, I guess, orally technically would have been previously handed down through the generations, but yeah, Brother Enoch, that's quite the assertion. And you know, I want to know what this book is, and we do have a book, right?
It's, lo and behold, we still have
Something
some of
of
that book left, you know?
Yeah, something of it.
But it makes sense because prophets are usually they're sent by the Father as agents to call people back to the true intended discipleship path. So in the days of Jared, Enoch's father, watchers descended, took wives, started mass corruption, chaos, and sin and rebellion on the earth. It would make sense that there would be a need for a prophet to arise to get people back to the originally intended discipleship path.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. And because of Enoch's faithfulness, God elected him to be physically translated and taken, not to heaven, not up above the firmament, as many people would think, but taken by angels to the Garden of Eden while it was still on the earth. And he spent 300 years there with those holy angels, presumably during this time that Enoch was shown visions in the spirit of how the luminaries complete their circuits over the earth, as well as how the calendar is reckoned with them. And we'll see a little bit of that in this next follow-up slide of Jubilees 4:18, where it says, "And Enoch was the first to write a testimony, and he testified to the sons of men among the generations of the earth. And he recounted the weeks of the Jubilees, and made known to them the days of the years, and set in order the months, and recounted the Sabbaths of the years, as we made them known to him."
I
That
find it's
is,
interesting when you actually peel back kind of like what's being said here about he was the first to kind of make known like how to understand the calendar to men. Like 7 generations later, it's like previously to that, it's what were they doing? You know, I mean, they obviously had some semblance of understanding from the beginning, but it's like did things start to get a little weird to the point where I kind of had to be shown everything and then write it down in the book, knowing like as people procreate and the world starts to get a little fuller with men, like we're gonna have to have some tangible evidence and like a working piece of literature that's gonna keep people on track. You know?
Yep.
it makes
Yep.
sense that as the population would grow, he would want something written down for, a standardized curriculum kind of thing for everybody, right? Whereas before with like Adam in the garden, the angels were teaching him directly, and then he was expected to teach his progeny.
Yeah, I mean, that is Genesis 6, right? And when men began to multiply on the earth. So that context is appropriate.
That's right. But so let's start diving into this calendar that supposedly Enoch and Solomon were shown. But first, Enoch 82, 7 through 8, and this is the R.H. Charles version. And it says, "And the account thereof is accurate, and the recorded reckoning thereof is exact. For the luminaries and months and festivals and years and days has Uriel shown and revealed to me." This is Enoch speaking. Uriel is one of the holy angels, right? We would say one of the 7 archangels of the presence, "to whom the Lord of the whole creation of the world has subjected the hosts of heaven. And he has power over night and day in the heaven to cause the light to give light to men, sun, moon, and stars, and all the powers of the heaven which revolve in their circular chariots." So, right off the bat, we're not talking about a heliocentric model with the earth spinning around the sun. We're talking about the sun, moon, and stars revolving in a circuit, a circle overhead, over the face of the earth, the circle of the earth in the heavens.
I thought I thought pastors tell us that heaven is like all around us at all times. So like this is happening simultaneously in our existence, in our reality.
Interestingly enough, it is, right? It's all around us at all times, but it's a literal solid dome structure, as we've covered many times, right? The firmament. Look into it.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I love these depictions, and I love this chapter in First Enoch because it's like, okay, yeah. So we First Enoch is a collection of 6 different manuscripts that have survived antiquity, and they're partial manuscripts. But even with what has survived, we see that this same information was given to previous prophets in great detail. The Father thought it important to hand out this information. And that's where it blows my mind when people come along and just want to discount First Enoch as it's not valuable or as it somehow contradicts the Bible or somehow claims that Enoch is the Messiah. I'm like, bro, I just don't understand that interpretation at all.
Context, man.
I
If you're
know.
not paying attention all the way up to that one verse that they think completely destroys the validity of Enoch, it's like, well, you don't think Enoch would be like, wait a minute, I'm the Son of Man?
Right.
I'm the one? Like, clearly, it can't be talking about him, but I don't know. Anyways,
Yeah, it's rough.
it's rough. But you know what's cool about this passage? Is that Uriel is the one who was subjected to be in charge of the host of heaven. So when you think about it, even just like something, if you go to Joshua, right, when Joshua is commanding the sun and the moon to stand still, he's obviously calling out to Yahweh. Yahweh's given Uriel the authority to be in charge of the luminary circuit. So Uriel would have gotten the sun to kind of slow down in its course, right? Because he's the one who technically leads the whole thing.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
just wild when you think about all the moving parts, right?
And it comes so alive when you recognize the biblical creation model, right? All the working parts and the mechanisms that have to do with this calendar. It really provides a more of a purpose than just providing lights.
Yeah.
I love it.